Hello, welcome to MJRRPG, a podcast for tabletop role-playing game reviews, replays, etc. and so forth. The following review is for the Japanese Call of Cthulhu scenario, A Cup of Horror, or Kohi Ippaibu no Kyofu, written by Uchiyama Yasujirou, the first entry in the scenario collection Bibliothek 13. The first half of this review is spoiler light for players and keepers, while the second half is packed with spoilers and suggestions for keepers. In short, A Cup of Horror is a creepy and tight little dungeon crawl through a cafe, perfect for new players and keepers, and small enough to finish in under an hour if need be. It's made for 3 to 4 players and a 30-minute to 1 hour time limit, similar to the scenarios in Chaosium's Gateways to Terror, though I give it space to breathe with a little over an hour and a half. I don't see many groups managing to reach 2 hours, unless the keeper adds some extra content. And like Gateways to Terror, or other beginner-friendly scenarios like those in Type 40's Seeds of Terror series, A Cup of Horror is location and time restricted. The scenario is set in a delightfully creepy little cafe, as one could guess from the name or description. Nominally set in Japan, it could be reskinned to fit any setting without changing much else. A very nice map is included, once again similar to the detailed maps from Gateways to Terror. Room labels are on the map, but none really give anything away. The scenario text suggests showing the full map to the players right away, but I revealed the rooms as players explored them. Besides the map, there's only one small handout. This feels like it was a space-saving measure, as there are pictures and journals that could have been given handouts rather than just explanatory text. For Enterprise and Keepers, this would be a good place to start for some extra content. Bibliothek 13 unfortunately does not include any pre-generated investigators. For this scenario, that isn't too much of a detriment, as the investigators don't have much of any connection to the happenings. As long as they have reason to pop into a cafe, all will be well. It's always nice to have some pre-gens with role-playing hooks though, and without that the scenario doesn't have much role-playing meat to bite into. When compared to the Gateways to Terror scenarios, A Cup of Horror is just as good at introducing the Call of Cthulhu system to new players. I find the location and events creepier than the Gateways scenarios, but those scenarios also have well-developed investigators that fit in with the plot, giving plenty of role-playing hooks for new players to grasp onto. A Cup of Horror unfortunately does not, leaving it fairly sterile in terms of actual character role-playing, unless the players bring detailed investigators to the table. And given this is supposed to be a beginner scenario, that might be too much to ask. Overall though, I really enjoyed A Cup of Horror, and will happily use it as another introductory, short notice, or convention-ready scenario. It's great for showing new players Call of Cthulhu, and a refreshing, classic dungeon crawl like Haunted House for more experienced players to slot in between beefier sessions. If you'd like to try out A Cup of Horror, you can buy Bibliothek 13 from Amazon or the Kadokawa store site. It is currently only available in Japanese, though if you message me after buying it, I might be able to give you some notes on running it. If you are a player, stop here. Detailed spoilers lurk below, along with keeper suggestions. As said before, the scenario is a very straightforward dungeon crawl, though there are some twists in how to escape. The players enter a cafe, spot a body, and the doors are firmly shut behind them. Something is in there with them, but they can't see it. Maybe it's a ghost. With no way out, they explore every room in the cafe, gathering clues and equipment that can help them get out. An invisible creature turns out to be inhabiting the cafe, using its numerous tentacles to hold the doors firmly shut. And for a wonderfully weird little twist, the creature just wants to run the cafe. The scenario text is very clear that this is a scenario for beginners, both players and keepers, and has read-aloud sections for the keeper that are directed straight at players and not their characters. After the opening scene, the keeper is expected to read out a paragraph explaining that there is not enough time to wait for police, and that they will only be able to explore a few rooms. Then the keeper shows the players the full map of the location. This is obviously just to keep things as simple and quick as possible, but it sucks the players right out of the situation and makes it clear that this is just a game. Ask what's in A, receive description B, proceed to C. For players even vaguely aware how gaming works, I don't think any of this is necessary beyond gentle suggestions. When one of my players took the very rational step of calling emergency services when they saw a body get sucked up into a ceiling and the doors were all firmly locked. As the scenario is set in a chilly February, I also put it up in northern Japan and during a blizzard. Emergency services replied that they were on the way, but with the blizzard and a large number of other accidents, they would be heavily delayed, and suggested the investigators look for another way out themselves. If the players dally around the door for too long, then you can give an out-of-character suggestion to look around, and assuming your players are here to play a game, they will likely go do so. And if they don't, you can start doing spooky things. The creature in the cafe is an invisible spawn of Yog-Sothoth. By exploring the rooms of the cafe and the upstairs living area, the investigators find ways to confront the creature, as well as hints toward its origin, and if they think outside the box, a very odd, peaceful solution to the scenario. To combat its invisibility, they can toss flour or coffee grounds at it. To temporarily frighten it off, they can use a cattle prod used by the cafe's deceased master, who's also the creature's grieving father. By reading journals and piecing together its origins, they can get a picture that the creature is trying to follow in his father's footsteps and cares for the cafe. Using a burner and fuel from a siphon coffee maker, they can torch the cafe, distracting the creature. Or, the very observant investigator might notice that the creature has set out cups of coffee for the investigators. Combined with knowing that the creature is trying to keep the cafe running, they could simply sit down, drink the coffee, and pay their bill. The creature would let them go with a slurred but friendly, "Thank you, come again." Most parties won't attempt something like that, though one of my players did stop and consider the coffee, wondering out loud if they should drink it. Like most players, the others all assumed immediately it was poisoned, and instead used the hot coffee as improvised weapons. This of course just pissed off the creature. What horrible customers, and caused it to start its rampage. Combat with the creature is hectic and nasty. It has tentacles with suckers that drain blood, HP and con. After getting a sucker full of blood, the tentacles whip back and a little boy's head in the middle of the beast's bulky torso slurps it down. Gross. With multiple attacks, it can go after 2 to 4 targets a turn, either sucking their blood or simply smacking them around. It doesn't have particularly high stats, ensuring that investigators have a chance to fight back even if unarmed, but it will eventually overwhelm them if they don't come up with an escape plan. In my playthrough, armed with the cattle prod, a cup of coffee, and bags of flour, and the siphon coffee maker's burner, they eventually escaped the cafe, leaving it in a blaze. One of them had been bled down to a few hit points, and another driven indefinitely insane, but they all survived. The scenario can run up to an hour and a half if given room to breathe. If you want to stretch it further, you could add a few extra handouts, as it only has a single short one to start with. A number of other journals, photographs, and a mythos tome are described, and an enterprising keeper could take some time to create handouts for those, and then share them with the rest of us keepers. There's also nothing directly tying the scenario to Japan and could be set anywhere in the world with next to no changes beyond spoken descriptions. With a few tweaks, I really enjoyed A Cup of Horror, and have happily added it to my repertoire of introductory and short notice scenarios, along with Gateways to Terror and the shorter handful of Seas of Terror scenarios. If it came with pre-generated investigators as fleshed out as those in Gateways to Terror, I would put it up there with an Acropolis or Endless Light as a near-perfect beginner scenario. Thank you for listening. If you prefer reading over listening like a giant nerd, you can find the written review over on mjrrpg.com. And if A Cup of Horror sounds like something you want to try out, you can buy Bibliothek 13 from Amazon or the Kadokawa store site. Unfortunately, it's currently only available in Japanese. Credit and thank you to CryoChamber for use of their album Cthulhu. See the show notes for links to their YouTube and Bandcamp. Until next time, have a good one.